Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, because the other thing's still not really solved, you know, and I don't have time to do it yet, so.
your volume of your voice went up.
Yeah, it's just
Uh,
because I'm really close to the mic right now.
Are you going to do it through OBS today?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. The other thing's still not really.
Even if you don't know chords at all, you don't know anything about music theory, like.
What is that?
We are live.
Yeah, we are. Welcome, everyone. I don't know what that was, but. All right. So, welcome, everyone, to today's event. We're jumping in here a little early. Hello. Let me type into the chat here. Hey, guys, and, welcome. Let's give it like maybe another minute. Let some other people show up. So as usual, if you have any questions, type them into the chat. Obviously, we're going to do our best to, to respond to any questions that you guys may have. We're going to focus on fluidity in the figure today, and how do you accomplish that? Let's give it maybe, like I said, another minute, and we'll get ourselves underway. Yeah. Hopefully everyone's doing okay with the whole quarantine, lockdown, safe distancing thing. Yeah. So what would be great for you guys that are joining is maybe think about what questions you might have, even before we get started and start showing you what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about fluidity. There might be things there that you want answers to. How are you guys doing? Swendly, Diego, and Mritunjay?
Hey, how are you, Mike? How are you guys?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Hey, how are you? Staying at home, working.
It's like a wave of saying hi. It's wave, hey.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in prior videos, but I love how we're all over the planet. Like I'm all the way in California. We've got Argentina, India, and the Netherlands. Is it right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. For Swendly.
We're dominating the world.
Yes. This is what it's all about, force domination. That's our secret agenda. Not so secret anymore. All right, well, let's get started. So today we're going to focus on fluidity, right? And what does that even mean, right? Like, how do we get to a place where our drawings have a sense of fluidity in them? Because I see, I'm on Instagram, of course, and Instagram goes to Facebook, and I'm on YouTube, and I wouldn't say I'm super social, but I kind of have a sense of what's going on there, and some artists are not fluid, and some are fluid, and I guess just understanding even what the separation of those two things mean. Now, last week we talked about line, and admittedly, I'll probably do a little bit of a rehash of that, because a lot of this idea of fluidity comes from the line itself, right? The line will actually help support that. Oh, and you know what? Because I'm still learning YouTube, please remember to subscribe, right? If you like what we're doing here every Friday, then hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. The bell will help you actually get the notifications, so this way you'll automatically know when we're coming on, right? Okay, so as I was saying, like, what does it mean? How does it work? How do we get to this place of fluid figure drawing, right? All right, I'm going to get myself a blank canvas here so we can talk about it. Okay, let's start drawing.
Let's jump into force party, guys.
Yes. That's what we should have called it, just force party. All right, Force Friday parties.
Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about fluidity, right? Let me make this black, D. I guess one way we can think about this is if we're trying to focus on fluidity, what would be the opposite of fluid? I guess like stiff would be the opposite of fluid, right? So we have fluid drawing and we have stiff drawing. And what helps create that? Well, very simply, typically stiff drawings are made up of lines that are very straight. Right? So if I were to draw a figure, here I'll try drawing a figure with straight lines. Whoops, too curved.
Fight against nature.
Yeah, exactly. So here's a figure, right? And I think we could probably all safely say it's pretty stiff, right? And you know, I'm sure there's a vast majority of you out there who have done this. I know I've done this, right? Here's a stiff drawing. So, very simply put, right, stiff comes from straight lines. Now, can you have a drawing that comes from more straight lines and still be forceful? You actually can. I posted some stuff on my Instagram account this past week, in fact, where I was like, angular force, you know, it was more angular, stiffer. It's harder because you really got to know how to play the angles against one another to, you know, to get fluidity happening and have things feel like they're moving. But it can happen, but it's a very easy trap, like I said, to create stiff drawings because of straight lines. So first simple answer here, try to stay away from straight lines in the beginning, right? So the opposite of a straight line is a curved line, right? And as we talked about last week we went more into how do you draw the force line, right? We talked about the airplane as a metaphor. We talked about you want to come in with the line and leave, you know, with the line. Now that very specifically to me talks about like the force line. But even if I didn't draw a force line and I drew just a curved line, so I'm going to begin from a stop position and I'm going to end at a stop position, this already has more fluidity in it, this curvature, than this straight line does. Now, when it comes to the theory of force, right, to our approach, this would be called a directional force line, right? Directional force. And again, the more straight a line is, the less of this second force is being pushed upon it, and that's called applied force. The more curved it is, the more applied force is on it, right? So, for instance, the applied force on this could be like a 1. If we had a 1 to 10 in power, and this would be a 10. All right, like there's a lot of applied force pushing on this guy. Right? All this energy is inside, and it's pushing on that line. And this one doesn't really have that much, right? Because it's almost straight. And you can see here, because of this, the idea we have all these angles, I'm not giving applied force any opportunity to really work in here. And that will lead me to this next page. So everyone remember this, right? We got our straight lines, our fluid lines, curves, directional, and applied forces, right? I'm going to delete this. So we have, you know, again, it could be like this. Let me make this a little darker. It could be like this. It could be like this, right? We've got applied. What really creates fluidity finally is that there's a relationship between directional force and applied force, right? And that relationship is called rhythm. Right, this is the powerhouse behind all of it. So you're drawing with curved lines instead of straights, right? I'll work on that over here in a second even more with you guys. But if I have curved lines, if I have a line like this, so this is a directional force, that directional force becomes an applied force. It applies itself to another directional force, like so. Right? It's actually pointing me to the next place. That's, you know, it's no accident I called these directional forces, because they direct you to the next place. And what do? They apply that power to the next place, right? So all this power from the past directional, this applied force, is smashing into this line. You see, like so. And I picture it like this. I'm like, boom, right? Smashing in here, right? And this is why this is all like curved out like that. The stronger this force is up here, the more curved this applied force would be, right? But notice it's relating to that original directional, okay? So these rhythms really, really matter. Whoops. Because the rhythms, they start to, let's see, hold on a second. The rhythms start to create fluidity, right? And this is the thing that we're really trying to learn today, is as I start to do this and I get a sense of one directional forces like this, right? And it starts applying itself to the next place. It's this relationship that starts creating fluidity, right? And this relationship, again, is a rhythm. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week. You know, the formula, right? The formula is that one rhythm is equal to two directional forces plus one applied. All right, this is the key, right? This is what we're looking for, okay? One rhythm is two directional forces and one applied. So again, one directional, another directional, and over here we have our 1A, one applied, right? And that creates this full system, one rhythm. So if you think about the straight lines, it's like, well, how would I do that, right? If I were to try to take these curves and turn them into straights, you know, like what am I doing, right? I might have something looks like this and like this. And there is a relationship going on here. Were you going to say something, Mritunjay?
Yeah, there are like some parallel lines, like it actually ends all the concept of being applied and being directional, right?
Parallel lines? You mean like this?
Yeah, some like, I mean, if you're talking about fluidity now, curved lines are really important, because if you use straight lines instead of curve, they'll be like ending all these concepts, you know, being directional and being applied. Really just, I mean,
So
ends it.
there's no transfer of energy, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no transfer. I mean, I could say, you know, and I do this in my mind, and this is why when we talk about gravity and angles are very important, and angles are representative of straight lines, right? So here we have this sweeping down like this, and this isn't to say it's not forceful. It has force. There's no applied force really pushing on this, or it's equalized on both sides. So to me, it kind of zeroes itself out, right? So I just have this like very direct force that's like this. Boom, I'm going to smash into here. And it's, you know, you can imagine water, right? If we like dumped a pitcher of water into here and it went down this angle, it would go down this slope of this roof and it would hit this next roof and it would splash over here and then it would go down here. But there's no, there's sort of no tactile relationship between these two. The energy of what's going down this straight doesn't get affected. It doesn't curve because it's having to deal with how much power is coming down from the prior place, right? Now, that's one reason. The other problem is, how do I explain this? The other problem is that if we were to draw a figure and say it's just of, you know, like angled lines like this, let's say here's a torso. The angled lines don't sweep us back into the body. You see, one of the secrets to drawing with force and understanding rhythm is that these convex curves, and if you don't know what convex means, I didn't either. It took me a little while to make sure I memorized it. Convex just means it's curving out, right? So let's say, you know, the body is here, right? So we're on the outside edge of this body and we're pushing like this. Convex is out, concave is in. You can think of a cave as a hole and it's like cutting into the body, right? So cave is pushing in, right? So what happens here with these directional forces that have applied force pushing on them is by the mere fact that the curve is being pushed out, the tails are like pulled in, right? They're going this way. That means they point us across the body to the next location. If I had just had straight lines, you know, it's a lot harder to more accurately try to like direct me through the body. you know, and across the body. I might get over here, but then I have no response, right? It's just not going to be as, it's not as effective, it's not as specific, right? It doesn't create a rhythm or a relationship. And, you know, let me write that down. Rhythm is really about creating relationships and connections. And on top of this, which I see is going on in the chat there a little bit, is it's actually what starts creating life in your work, right? It's this aliveness. It feels more organic, right?
Mike, sorry, there are 2 questions on the chat on our meeting.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that right now. It says, Marco says, I have a question. How do you maintain fluidity while not breaking the figure's bones? It's a good question. So that's a great question. If you are breaking bones, then you know you put too much force in there, right? For instance, I think the arm is like a great place to think about that. Here, let's get rid of this. So here's like the bones of the arm, right? We have the humerus, and we've got the ulna and the radius, right? It's like right here. So what would work here is the force of the deltoid flows along the bottom of the arm like this, and then into the wrist and the hand, right? Like so. So that works. I'm not breaking anything. But, you know, you don't want to create an over rubbery arm either. I don't want to do this and then come into especially the middle of the length of a bone and say there's a rhythm there. You see, this is a common mistake I'll see. So a rule to keep in mind is force and rhythms don't change. You don't get a rhythm in the middle of the length of a bone, okay? Force will hit a rhythmic moment at the exchange of a joint. And you can really think of the rib cage, the abdomen, and the pelvis. And you can see it spells wrap, so easy to remember. You can almost think of the rib cage and the pelvis as joints, right? Because they're 2 big bony areas. You know, so if there's any like major exchange, it'll come across here. If you have an S, the S is going to come across the abdomen and get to the next place. It's not like you're going to get a rhythm here in the rib cage, and you're not going to get a rhythm here in the pelvis. You see, you need to go across the soft muscle to the next joint really to make that happen. So the same thing with, you know, legs, right? You have the front of the thigh and, you know, outside thigh, inside knee. So you finally cross over here only at the joint. It doesn't happen in the leg itself. I could never do this and say, here's, let's say, the crotch. I'm not going to come across the middle of the leg to get over here. I'm not going to come across, you know, the middle over here or even go back. Like, I'm not going to get an S rhythm in here. I'm not going to get an S rhythm in here, right? So kind of keep in mind, that's what stops the idea of, you know, breaking bones, right? It's a good question. Danny asks, I have a doubt about applied force. Is it caused by gravity, by the model, or both? I would say both. Yeah, applied force is, I would say, hierarchically speaking, applied force really comes from gravity. That's its first initiator, right? The first creator of it, because you're always thinking, you know, gravity's pulling everything down, and the body is working towards or against gravity, right? So I don't know. You could let's say we have a reclined pose, and the model's like pushing up into their shoulder, right? And their body is hanging from that shoulder like so, right? And it's going into the wrist. I don't know. Let's say it's going up to their knee, and then from their knee down to their foot, right? So you can see now that here's gravity, right? Gravity is pulling down on the pelvis, on the rear end and the pelvis, the whole bottom is being pulled down. This is being pulled up, right? So there's a lot of upward force. There's a secondary force going on there because of how much weight is being pulled down over here, right? So those are all very gravity driven. You could have a model who is, you know, throwing their shoulder to the right. Could be like this, and you know, their shoulders over here like this, Here's the rest of their back. All right, here's their neck and head. So that's not so much gravity driven. That's like the model pushing their body in a certain direction, you see. So you could end up with either situation, okay? Again, very good question. Yeah. So you want to be aware of both of those, both of those things happening. And be aware also that they are both coming from the idea of you understanding function. This, by the way, is called leading edge, and that's something we'll talk about as a topic in the future, probably the near future, actually. Leading edge, right? So everything is like driving this way in this pose, right? But that's what's creating, the applied forces to Danny's question. Okay, so we know now that how do we get fluidity? We're going to get fluidity by starting off by drawing with curved lines, not straight lines. All right, that is the number one fast track into trying to get more fluidity out of your drawings. And you want to try and see if you can get a curved line of energy to connect to another curved line of energy in the body. Why? Because, again, this gives you rhythm. R-H-Y-T-H-M. And I even recommend that you actually draw the connection, which is the applied force. Make a mess of the drawing. It's totally fine, right? Like go in there and connect these ideas, right? Draw the fluidity as much as you possibly can, right? So we can see how it's all working. You see? This I call soft touch. I believe we talked about it last week, right? So you can see I'm like building up my line, but now it's not only the line I'm building up. I'm trying to build up what the rhythm of the body is, right? Here, I'll try drawing one from imagination.
And I think that connection that you're pointing out is what most beginning force artists like miss, right? They kind of do this brackets, like they draw the curves without understanding the idea behind it.
Yeah, not only the idea, and thank you for bringing that up, Swendly. This is okay. Like this is an okay start. At least you get here, right? That starts creating rhythm for you. I call this like bouncing. You kind of feel a bounce of force pushing out and pushing out that way, and that's good. But I think the step you really want to get to is what I'm doing here on the left, which is I'm really drawing the connection. In time, that will be able to drop off, and you'll actually get even potentially to something like this again. But this will be so much better informed by the fact that you drew the applied force and that you actually flowed through the body. So that's one benefit. The other benefit to this, by the way, is as you draw with soft touch and you're trying to connect all of this, you're going to feel, it gives you a better chance, just because even the time it takes to do it, it's going to give you a better sense of what applied force feels like. What does it mean to keep hitting this shoulder up into the air, into the air, into the air, you see? Right? And you have, it's a more generous line. Like drawing with a bigger brush that's softer or lighter. What I mean by generous is you have room to nudge things around and make mistakes, right? Instead of trying to do it, right away with, with a black line and saying, oh, I need to draw a force, and already your value, the line is already this dark, especially when you're just learning, right? Because you'll probably be, making a lot of mistakes here, which is fine. But I'd rather you make them here lightly so you can make all those mistakes and keep, learning before you get into all this darkness, right? And then you can start building up and getting more of the accuracy of more of what you actually see. You see? So here you might say, hey, it's something like this.
So yeah, basically it's giving us opportunity to think more.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's giving you an opportunity to think and explore and feel, right? There's so much stuff that comes out of that opportunity. Right? I'm just drawing a generic.
Yeah, right? That's like.
Excuse me? Swendly, you were saying something?
It's like sculpting.
It's like sculpting? Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
to me, you know, we go always to that driving metaphor. I really feel like I am actually like sliding through this drawing, right? Like I'm driving through it. I'm pushing up against curves, right? And you can see, hopefully, you know, you can see even just with these drawings out of my head today that there's a lot of this fluidity, right? Which is today's topic, is like, how do I get to that? Eric says, that's my question actually. How is drawing the applied force different than snaking? Great question. So I have a thing called snaking, right? There's like the bunny rabbit and the snake, right? Let's talk about that really fast. What are those two ideas even mean? I came up with these as just some quick metaphors, some quick tools for you to better understand some of the traps that can happen. So if we were to take this pose here, the rabbit, right, would do this. Okay, I'm bouncing my way down. Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because we're taking away the opportunity of crossing over. And the crossover is important because these rhythms, we didn't talk about this yet, but these rhythms, the reason why they're happening anatomically from one side to the next is they're counterbalancing weight, right? We talked about gravity, right? They're counterbalancing weight. So there's a certain amount of applied force here and here that's pushing this weight to the left and this one to the right, and it's creating balance in the body, right? If I bunny rabbit my way down a side, that means I don't have this. I'm not acknowledging this. So you can see this is a one-sided drawing, right? All the weight is on one side. And I lose rhythm, right? I lose rhythm, I lose fluidity. It you know, it goes right in the face of everything we're talking about today, right? The snake, it's like, well, how does the snake work relative to this? The snake means when you're drawing a force, sure, you might think, oh, Mike said that, you know, rhythm is doing this kind of line. That's true, right? Because we got a directional, we have an applied, and another directional. And I'm going to get into this more in a second. But not down the same side of the body. See, I don't want to draw the figure like this. Why? Again, because I totally ignored the purpose of rhythm, which is to counterbalance the weights in the body, right? I'm not doing that here. And to go back to this conversation, what this line really is this is one concave, which is a directional force, but then, one convex, sorry, this is convex, right? That's a convex. This is a concave. And then here's another convex. So this S, this like S-ing actually has like three ideas in it, right? Idea number one, idea number two, and this line should be here more. This is convex again, right? So it's got idea number three. What's the problem here? The problem is I'm not balancing out the body. We learned today that one of the tricks or tools to use is convexes are our directional forces. Where does that line want to take me? Notice it wants to take me across to the other side, you see? So the concave is really a convex on the other side of the body. You see how it's pushing out over there? That's what you're looking for. If you realize you went concave, chances are you're really in the wrong place. You need to be on the other side of the body and turn that into a convex, right? So that's what snaking is.
That's really relatable.
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's actually relatable to the first rhythm we are drawing, right?
Yes.
It's not independent.
Right. Yeah, so those are all the major, like I said, all the major secrets to getting through this. So Mritunjay happened to send me a video this week that I thought would be really informative for you guys to watch, because you'll get to see how he uses the soft touch approach, and I want you to see what all of his first initial ideas are, right? So let's see, let's get back over to Photoshop here, and I'm going to shut this off, and we're going to bring up our timeline, get rid of that too. Let's see, timeline. Okay. Where is it? There it is. All right, so hopefully you guys can see this, right? So even here, this is just on the title, but and I'm going to scrub this. We have video, so I'll scrub this. I just want you to see those beginning stages in each drawing, okay? You can see the fluidity of the force of the back is sweeping into the pelvis and down around. Look at the relationship of the shoulder sweeping into the arm, right? So, you know, as Felipe called it on the chat just now, we're looking for those transitions, right? Transitions from one side of the body to the next. Those transitions are rhythms, right? And the best book, Felipe, I would say, would be the 10th Anniversary Force book. I would start with number 1. That's the one that covers all foundation. So here's Mritunjay drawing. So this is all the other extra stuff, right? You're starting to really build up the rest of the masses and the anatomy on top of that. What I really want to focus on today is all these beginnings, like that. You see? Like looking at the start of how he's using the soft touch approach. This, by the way, is Procreate with the PSKI brush, right? The large, and then I think you said you used another brush for the darker, more specific lines, right?
Yeah, so I just use pet pencil, a brush called pet pencil. So I really give me an opportunity to soft touching things, so I can really make my adjustments and thinking, specifically what we talked about, and then I just use a cleaner brush to make specific things. Yeah, that's actually the process.
Yeah, and that, I would imagine, what you're getting out of that is that allows you to get the big ideas down fast, right?
Yeah, so in actually big ideas, I already gone like 50 to 60% of the whole body gesture.
Yeah,
The power and all.
Right.
And all other things are just really extra things.
Yeah.
That even if I don't do it, that would really convey the gesture. I can see
I think this answers Felipe's go into structure using force.
Oh,
yeah,
how to do that. Felipe was asking about structure, you said, Swendly?
Yeah, I think he asked about how to, like, when you continue developing the drawing, he was referring to like the pin shape and that stuff for the torso, and how to incorporate force into that, or how to not lose force once you go into forms.
Yeah, I think that'll definitely be a future conversation for us to have, but the main way to do it is to create form through the system of force, that you are actually, you're using force to direct mass, right? And you're designing or defining those masses based on how they move, right? So, here's another example of, this is the first few seconds of this drawing. Soft touch approach, and as Mritunjay was saying, this drawing is like more than 60% done, right? All the major ideas are here. We really see the entire pose, the entirety of it, and you want to understand that entirety before you really start getting caught up in all of the minutia and anatomy and details. The anatomy does not come first, folks. First thing that happens is this, right? Some people call it gesture. Call it what you will, but the point is you want to get those rhythms and those forces working for you at the beginning, right?
And I got the function first of all.
Yeah.
That's the goal of it.
Yeah, that's right. The function, the rhythm is representing the function, right? Yeah. It's like helping us see it. So, in this one, and I think you said most of these are even just out of your head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is even just from imagination. Yeah. So I think that, that's something to be aware of too, guys. Most of you, I'm sure your goal in life is not to say, hey, I want to become an awesome figure drawing artist. A lot of people that come to drawingforce.com come because, they want a career, right? And here's Mritunjay drawing these figures from imagination, right? So you could take this and go and draw comics, or you can take force and learn how to be a storyboard artist or a concept artist, right? Doesn't matter. It's adding another level of reality, believability to your art, right? Because things will make sense and they'll be rhythmic like the body really is, right?
It actually exists everywhere until you draw like a chair or table something.
Yeah.
So you can use it anywhere.
Yeah, like normally, yeah, that's a question that I used to get all the time is, is there force in everything? Well, I'd say at the beginning, there's force and there's rhythm in organic things. Um, and then inorganic, it just depends on the designer. Some things are organic, some are not. But I'll tell you one thing, there's function in everything. So you can think about the energy of a tree, right? Where, again, its trunk might be really straight and stiff. But that is its strength, its force is that it is so strong, right? So strong. And then it's got this very gnarled rhythmic root system that's creeping and crawling its way through the ground and through the dirt, right, for minerals and so on, for nutrients, right? And then at the top of the tree, it explodes outward, and again, it branches out, literally branches out, and leaves pop out of that, and those are all very fluid and rhythmic as well, and that allows them to capture sun, right, for photosynthesis. So, this like I said, there's a sense of energy, of force in all things.
I think when people ask that question, actually what they're asking is if there is rhythm in everything, and people might get those two things confused. I think.
Yeah, that's a good question too. No, there isn't rhythm in everything. Most definitely not. Like if I'm staring at a tripod for a camera, for instance, it has no rhythm, right? It's like a bunch of straight lines. They're all, there's 3 legs. It's a tripod, right? So there's 3 legs with a pole in the middle. There's no rhythm to that. Rhythm.
There was a comment, sorry guys, there was a comment about an egg, if there was force in an egg.
In an egg? That is so funny. Let me answer that 1 second. I want to get to that. I want to finish up here, and let's get to the egg comment. So I'm scrubbing through Mritunjay's work here. I just want you guys to see what drawing with force looks like, and hopefully you start getting a sense of what it feels like just by seeing that. You can see there's even some sculpting going on in here. You can see how the lines are force lines, how they're creating rhythms in the body, right, creating fluidity, right, and he's starting to get some anatomy in there, right. Here's a great example, right, before he starts going in with the darker lines, there's pretty much the whole body, right, like it's all rhythmed out already. The whole pose is there. It's going to stand. He starts creating more of the structures in there, more of the specificity of the anatomy, holding on to the fluidity, right? And then last but not least, this one. I love this one. I love how much there's space too. So the elbow gets like really huge in our face.
So again, if you'll see the starting of this, again, I just get the whole body down in the first lines.
Yeah, let's take a look at that actually. Let me slowly back up here. Yeah, it's like there, right? Like there's pretty much the entire pose. The arms there. It's really all about the rhythm, transition, applied force, flow, whatever we want to call it. It's going from the back into the stomach. So this is like an S torso, and from the shoulder it goes down into the arm to the elbow, and then back up to the wrist, right? So there's our path, our what I call
Yes, like these are like the main ideas that I get down really, really quickly because that's what I want to focus on. And the other thing that I like drew actually afterwards that are not basically, supporting the overall jet force, I believe. So that's it, Like the other hand, for example, the backward hand, it's really not, it's okay if I don't draw that. My main goal here is to push this elbow out of this space, So, yeah, that's what I like, bring in soft touch and everything down.
Yeah, the soft touch thing, it's, I think in one of our future meetings, we're going to talk about what's the fastest way to learn how to draw. And I don't want to give that away yet because we're focusing on fluidity today and rhythm, but I think that's a really big conversation for us to have. And yeah, and by the way, if any of you guys have something you want us to talk about specifically, or I start seeing that a lot of the same comment comes up, my email is mike@drawingforce.com. Feel free to email me. I'm all ears. I'd love to hear. All right. So anyway, like I said, thank you, Mritunjay, for allowing me to share this today. I wanted you guys that are here with us on this live session today to see, what is force what does force look like, right? Like what does rhythm in the body look like? Where do you start? How do you start? I think we'll do some session on specifically even more like how to start. That'll be a very specific topic. But you can see that we rhythmically can travel from the fingers through the wrist, from the wrist, down to the elbow, from the elbow up to the shoulder, over the back, down into the stomach to the hip, right? So there's a very clear path, right? And rhythm is you creating those paths, right? Okay, so let's move on to the second half of our session today. I'm trying to save the second half for critiques. Thank you again, Mritunjay. Awesome work. Yeah, thank you. And let's start bringing you guys in here. Hold on, I need to... Let's bring our timeline back up and get it over here. There we go. Okay. So we have Arjun. Get myself a layer here. So what I'm going to try to do is, we're going to try and take what we learned today and say, okay, like, how's that working in this drawing or not working in this drawing? How can we get more force out of it, right?
Okay, guys, I'm going to leave the chat for now.
Yes.
Somebody else is going to take it.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to bother Mike while he's drawing.
Yes, please. Come bother me. So this is Arjun's drawing. There's a lot of good stuff going on in here. To me, this is someone who's got a good eye going. It's like the beginning of really starting to like see things. It's like I'm seeing the face, I'm seeing the mustache and the nose, right? I'm seeing wrinkles in the clothing. They're starting to see the world more and more clearly, right? And that's great. That's actually one of the first steps to just learning how to draw. Forget about force and rhythm, just drawing. One thing I would be really careful of in here is you can see how sometimes you're working, and that is you're creating these like stick figure moments. Like you have this here, and you can see you're doing the little ball and stick thing. I think that's what you're doing here as well. So this arm dies immediately because of that beginning, right? Now, fortunately, I have to say, you did start, even though you put that in there, you did start creating a little bit more of an arc out of the forearm, and that starts giving it force. And here it's a little trickier. You're getting into a little bit of a curve. This kind of goes to the egg thing that somebody asked before. Does an egg have force? It does have force, but it's symmetrical, and we'll talk more about shape in future videos, but it's symmetrical. I would say, it's pushing out in these moments, right? If you ever try to pinch an egg, by the way, from the top and bottom, it's pretty damn strong because of its symmetry, right? You push down here and in here, this arch, on either side is actually very, very strong, versus, you cracking it in the middle, right? So it doesn't have rhythm. I would say there's always force implied, and plus there's stuff inside of here that's pushing out, but there's definitely no rhythm in it, that's for sure. So this drawing, the way that this would get improved is to say, or at least add more force to it, is to really be cognizant or aware of this curve getting from the shoulder to the elbow, right, like this, and then from the elbow to the wrist, like this, and then having to figure out what am I going to do with the hand, right? Is the force of the hand going down into the bottom and then into the fingers? Right now you can see your hand. I'm guessing this is from reference because it kind of looks a little copied, like it has a subtlety of copiness in it. When you drew the hand, it almost looks like you went, here's that, here's the shape, of the finger, the thumb is something like this. Thank you.
Actually, Mike, that's a good example of snaking. That's the difference, a clear difference about a snaking. What you're doing in the hand, right? Like doing like that.
Not snaking per se, but outlining. What you're doing here is you're outlining a lot. The snaking would be, I'm going to draw the back, and I do that, right? And then I try to get to the other side. Instead of the approach being, I'm going to draw from the back's going to get me to the stomach. And you can see there's some subtlety of that happening in this drawing. but not just going down one side through multiple curves instead of actually following the path itself, right? The legs, you're starting to get some rhythm going on in there, right? Notice that we have this curve in the front of the leg and we have this curve in the back, and it feels like there's a relationship starting to go on in there. So that's starting to create one rhythm, you see?
I think that's a good point, Mike. Like, it's good for people to keep in mind that we are not making these things up. These things exist in reality, you know. So if you observe reality, like happened in the leg, you will get it because it's there.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, thank you for saying that. Force, again, isn't something I invented. You know, look at the Renaissance, just as a really obvious point. There are guys 500-600 years ago that were drawing, with force all over the place, sculpting force, painting force, drawing force. So they had to have gotten it from somewhere, right? It's this sensitivity to really seeing what's going on in life, It's kind of funny to me because there's a lot of drawing approaches and painting and so on that stand on the grounds of we're teaching you how to see better, but ignore function. Like, you need to see function, right? You need to see force. It's part of reality, and yet there's this gigantic thing that's taken out of that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. Thank you, Arjun, for submitting your work. So this is Talulham. Man, I hope you were here I think it was last week, where we talked about line. I would say that's your first challenge. Your first thing to tackle is going to be working on the line, right? This is I really, really am so happy that you sent this in. Thank you for submitting your work. Look at last week's session, because the first thing for you to tackle is, get from joint to joint with a force line. You can see in here, by the way, you're doing a little bit about the same as Sarjan was with having like this sort of ball, and stick thing going on, right? I would recommend, just find the contours and just simplify them into curves for now, and see if you can keep following the paths through them, right? And your lines, lines represent ideas, right? So you can see the minutia, meaning how small all these like little lines are. Instead of saying, I want to feel the full force of the rib cage pushing that way. You see that? And then it's swinging down below the pelvis. It swings up into this hip this way. And this comes up and over and pushes down this way. The combo of these two guys actually push us out. You see, like so. See how you're starting. Again, this is great because there's the reveal. The reveal is in the beginning. If you guys are starting with stick figures and like balls for the joints and then sticks in between, they're typically very straightish lines, then man, it's really hard for the human mind to leave that. You've already created a construct and you're going to draw a stiff figure, So in this case also you're slightly concaving in, force on the arms, and we'll get into templates someday, but force on the arms is on the elbow side, so this would actually push out and push out like this. And then on the leg, my guess on this is it probably would be an outside thigh, inside knee, and an outside calf like this, right? And then that gets us into the far ankle, and then this foot would be like this, and then this would be the ball of the foot, and you want to make sure it feels like this is the inset, right? So it's like that. And then the toes would be, in there all crunched up, right? And big toe first, it feels like you got your big one on the outside there. Right, so big would be here, and then smaller and smaller, so on. And then here, again, you can see there's no clear curve in here. Even if I look
That's the egg, right?
Excuse me? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is like a giant egg, right? So we can, to Diego's point, he's saying this, right? It looks like a giant egg, and the egg is symmetrical, so there's no curve in this, right? You need to find a curve. So even if you had a stick figure, but the stick figure was even made of curves, that would be better, right? So you could say, well, I want the leg to go this way. Right now, you start deciding like which contour is going to do that. Right now, this leg has a direction, right? It's going that way. It's called directional it's called directional force, folks, because it's directing you in a towards a place, right? And if you can arc it, the arcing is what starts creating more fluidity, because it'll help you connect to the next arc or the next curve, and that rhythm is what gives your drawing fluidity. Okay. All right, thank you so much for sending this in, because believe me, you're not the only one. This is like how we all start, is sort of scratching our way along, and watch the video online, on how to draw a better line, and then on this, and start putting those two together for yourself.
There's a question on the chat. I was just a glimpse at it, and it's Arthur Phillip. He said, "Why do we avoid S curve in the Forcel figure when William Hogarth wrote a book about it? In many draftsmen whom we all have reverence for encourage it, and there's no problem with the S itself."
Yeah, I think, Arthur, I'm not sure if I understand your question right. It sounds like what you're saying is, when you say why do we avoid it, it sounds like you're stating an assumption around, like, in general we do avoid it. I guess as human beings, right? Like when we start drawing, we avoid it, and yet me or someone like William, like Hogarth or other draftsmen have a reverence for it. Why isn't it more encouraged? Or it is encouraged. Why don't we naturally do it? I don't know. It's a good question. Some people do get it more immediately. Some people, it takes a really long time. Not to go into a giant psychology session, but I think that most of the time we draw from a place of concern and worry, and that creates drawings with like little lines, and we're trying to crawl our way along, and I think we make this assumption that my drawing is good when it looks like the photograph, and that puts you into the space of copying instead of admiring, right? Instead of admiring the life of the thing you're looking at, right? And have a sense of awe in it, and to try to understand it, right? Understand its function and so on. I think a lot of fear and concern, or you can call it obligation to the reference, puts us in a place of drawing where we're not thinking about force. We're not thinking about rhythm. We're thinking, can I just copy this and get it right? And get it right it has to be a good copy, and that's not thinking about rhythm. Then your mind's in a totally different place. You see, you never even get to that place, right? All right, so this is Esther's. So Esther, you're drawing, basically what you're doing right now is you're doing a lot of contour drawing. I know Diego and I were talking about this actually beforehand. So that means you're just kind of outlining the body, right? And by outlining it, if I did this and I said, well, let's say I draw the same body I drew for you guys before. If I just do this, I might get some rhythm out of it. Notice, like this to this. But you can see the intention in my drawing is not to find the rhythm and fluidity in it. And you might draw it if you have a good eye and recognize, like, wait a minute, that does connect to that, so it's in the right place and I see it. But most of the time, as Arthur was saying, most of the time our eye's not even trained to see that. So then you're just going to end up with figures that are contour line drawings, but they don't have any energy. And you're not getting the chance to cross over, you're not getting the chance to feel the power of it. Yeah, was someone going to say something?
Yeah, me, and not only about that, about aesthetics also, it kills the dimensionality of the drawing.
Yeah.
Because there's no overlaps, so it flattens everything out.
Yeah, that's true. Like you have some overlaps, like one right there, and that helps because that puts that in front and that behind. But there's a ton of opportunities up in here, for instance, on this edge too, that don't. Look at all this, right? Like you're just drawing the contours versus the forces. And force over time, as someone asked earlier, can create form, So I would stay away from the idea of purely just copying an edge. You can see that over here too.
And what's funny, but not funny, it feels like the lines inside for the anatomy, like breast or belly button or the sternum, they're just line floating inside the figure.
That's right.
They have no structure,
Yeah. So like Diego is saying, you could take the bottom of the breast and I could lasso that and pull it out, right? It's not connected. These are like these little, they're almost like little tick marks, they're just like little dots, little lines here and there in that body, but there's no hierarchy. There's no holistic approach to saying, I need to know that the sternum is here and I want to get the rib cage. It's not like you have to draw the whole rib cage, by the way, but you want to understand how these things start to connect. It's like the breast is here and it's going to pull up with the pectoralis and get me over here, right? And you start gluing together even, the anatomy, right? It's all like one thing, and you're constantly working to get to that oneness and understand it, right?
One thing I think it's important to say that we're not here to kill someone's drawing. We're just pointing out things that you could fix or be aware of to get better at this that you like.
Yeah, most definitely, of course. Let's see. So this is Joshua. Let's see if we can get to full screen here again. Okay. So, all right, there's some stuff going on in here, right? There's a sense of energy, right? I'm feeling this, right? There's something going on here, something bigger than just getting caught up in detail. In animation, right, most of you, I'm sure, have heard of like line of action. So like the line of action feels like this. I've had, by the way, the question like, what's the difference of line of action and force? Line of action is kind of even just a bigger, simpler, abstract. Force and rhythm really are attached more to the anatomy of the body, right? Like this is all coming from actual anatomy and function and how the body is working. Okay, so rhythmically, what's really going on is, we have this force going on like this, right? And this boxer is pushing up this way, right? And this is going to be a torso. I would swing this over here towards the stomach and around. And then from there, I'm going to get the strength of the legs, right? Like this leg is coming out like this. The general idea of this leg is to shoot down, but I think I would get a subtle, what I call outside, inside, outside, a subtle knee in there. And then I'd get the calf to sweep down, into the heel of the foot, into the ball of the foot to get this shoe down there, right?
I think it's important to mention that look at what is going on the screen and see that Mike is almost tracing the other drawing. So the drawing is not bad. It's just the thinking, the ideas are not clear with the lines, and that's if any of you haven't watched the previous session, go take a look at it and see how we talk about the line. Because here you can see clearly the difference with Mike's line and this artist's line, how it changed the drawing.
Yeah, and I would agree 100% with that. I mean, this drawing is pretty good, right? Like the positioning of it and even some of the general ideas of movement. I think you just understanding that this line equals force, it equals energy, right? Like you need to draw with it to really feel the power I'm talking about. Will help you. And you're starting to, I want you to be aware, I see this over here. You're starting to try and do that over here. My suggestion would be just don't jump ahead too fast. You're trying to create shapes here and stuff, like just see if you can get the rhythms of all this. Like here, the force isn't on the bottom of the leg, it's never on the hamstring, by the way. So here it's pushing into the knee this way and then it's coming back out. See? So I would work in this place first, where you're just creating these like noodly figure drawings with a lot of energy and just trying to figure out like, where do I go, right? It's almost like unlocking doors in the body, right? And you want to keep understanding, how do I unlock it? And then drive through it over and over and over again, really get comfortable with how to flow through the whole thing, There's a lot of good work going on here. You are on the right track, just keep working on the line, soft touch approach, find the templates and work through the templates and you'll get there,
By the way, I have to say something about his drawing as well.
What's that?
Yeah, I mean, just look at the amount of work he's doing, like little iterations. Yeah, I mean, it's really good if this artist get the idea of the line, it will just explode.
Yeah.
And I can see the little iterations, the triangular thing also done on the right side.
Yeah.
And the small things. So really great.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of great work going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could see, look, like Diego was saying, I pretty much just drew your drawing. It's just the intention of it that shows up through that line, because that line has its own intention, its own idea, that look at what it starts doing to the work, all right?
Yeah, and if you draw the forces, the line of action will take care of itself. I think people are over preoccupied with that. I mean, just
Right.
draw how the body works, and the line of action will appear. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like we saw in the Mritunjay video. Is you start understanding how it works, and then adding details. Somebody asked about anatomy, if it's good to learn anatomy. Yes, it's good to learn anatomy, but if you don't understand what you're drawing, what you're trying to say, anatomy won't help you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was mentoring this morning, and one of my students was saying, she's been with me a little while now, she was saying when she started in art, she went and took a painting class, right? Like that's where she started. And she realized very quickly, the teacher said, you know, look, you need to go learn how to draw. Like, doesn't matter how much you try and paint this or render it, it's never going to happen, right? It's not going to work, because you need the drawing skill to understand like form and structure, and you know, light and shadow comes from an understanding of form, and there's perspective, and then anatomy, right? All that stuff keeps building on itself.
Oh man, this is too hard. I quit.
It is. It's a long journey, you know, it's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I have students who take mentorship, and they'll say, oh, you know, I want to learn how to do this in the next, like one of the packages is 36 weeks. If you're a beginning and then you come in to learn force with me and learn how to draw in 36 weeks, I can promise you, you're not going to get all the way to, you know, force, form, shape, and anatomy in 36 weeks. You have to at least have some skill to get there. If you're just starting off, it's going to take longer than that. And I've got to tell you, that's actually pretty damn good. When you go to art school, to really get to drawing well, it's probably going to take you at least 2 or 3 years, you know, to get to like really good skill. So having like a one-on-one practice on you yourself, you know, speeds things up, but it still it takes time, you know, it takes time to build the skills. So this is Eric's, let's see. There's some good ideas going on about trying to create fluidity, right? There's an attempt here at flowing from here to here, right? So we have this S-ing. But the problem here is this pose is not an S torso, it's a C torso. So what does that mean? That means the torso is just more simply trying to push out this way, right? This rib cage is trying to push out, right? And then it's bending its way back, it's pushing up into the hip like this. So there's no reason for me to cross over here. What I want to do is swing down and feel the stretching of the stomach, you see, and then her hip going up like this. So this becomes a C instead of an S. If I made it an S, I would cut out the stomach, right? And then I lose all this energy that's in here that's really driving me into the hip, right? Again, it's something I think we'll talk more about in the future, is like torsos and what's an S and what's a C and a CS and how to identify them. But this is what we're trying to get, right? And Eric, I believe you're on the site. I would say don't get into shape. You're getting into shapes too early. Here's sort of an almost like an egg, right? This is an elliptical leg, and there's very specific, strict rules to shape. So if you get into shape too early, typically this kind of thing happens, where you actually start taking away force from your drawing, you know?
And here's a good example of the gastrocnemius muscle there. You know, he knows it exists, but it's not worth it there. That placement, okay, that is good, you know, anatomy, but it didn't help you,
yeah,
on getting the fluidity of a pose.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point, Diego. You know, it's like you can see anatomy here is not supporting rhythm in any way, right? Yeah, it's awesome. All right, let's see, we've got Victoria. All right, lots of good stuff going on. Let me just make sure there's nothing there. Some good, you know, there's some good bending happening in the torso. I would say my first response to this is all your line work, Victoria, is very much the same. So you've got some, you know, like you have this bending in the torso, and that's good. But I don't know if you intellectually understood. Oh, here, Diego. Thank you. I don't know if you intellectually understood that the bending of the rib cage here is affecting the shoulder over here. There's a relationship between that, and that the hip over here is pushing out, because of this bending, right? It's almost like you can think of it as like the hip is trying to come up and the shoulder's coming down, and they want to touch each other, but they can't, right? So this explodes outward because of it. And you would start seeing that in your line, like the line weight, the way you're drawing. It shows your thoughts. Drawing is thinking, right? So be aware every week that we come into these Force Fridays and we look at each other's artwork. It's like, here's how Victoria is thinking. Here's how Mritunjay is thinking. Here's how Mike's thinking. These are thoughts on the piece of paper, right? So it's a little mechanical to me. The drawing's a little mechanical to me. I think you have a better opportunity of being more expressive with your line to try to get the rhythms. I wouldn't worry about the shapes right now, like you have that straight and this curve. I would start first by just trying to feel power. Feel force, feel the rhythm of it. Just try to find the full, system. Right now you're missing the inside knee moments, for instance, right? So you want to feel that energy. This arm, notice how there's a rhythm inside the bones, between joint of the elbow and the joint to the wrist. This is what I was talking about before. You can't do that, right? Having an extra bend in there rubberizes the arm. It's almost like you broke the arm right there. You see? So you want to be careful of that. You have a lot of skill going on. I can see that you've learned from some of the other guys on the internet. There's a lot of good stuff happening. I would say just loosen up. Loosen up and flow around. Don't worry about the exactness at the beginning. Instead, focus on the energy of it and do the soft touch and give yourself some room to make mistakes and feel it out. Okay? Thank you for submitting the work. All right, we got a couple more left here. So this is Maurice. Wow, today's lesson was about like fluidity and rhythm, and a lot of fluidity and rhythm in here. It's like, why? Right? I would say, like, why is it working? Why are we starting to see this in Maurice's work, right? Well, he's got very round curves in here, right? It's like, wow, that's very curved. You can see the intention of the curvature here. They're starting to relate to one another, right? I feel like these two ideas, this is an idea, this is an idea, they're coming together, right? They feel like they're starting to come together. I can start feeling like there's a system here. I feel like, oh, wait, this is starting to go into this, right? So something's happening here for Maurice, right? Here, Maurice, in the leg, I think, man, things got broken up in here. It seems like you said the knee is going this way in perspective, but then the ankle is going this way. So this, ouch. Yeah, it hurts me. I'm like cringing just thinking about it. So this leg this is broken. She's totally broken from there down. So you have to make a decision on which way it's going to go. The ankle and the knee pretty much go the same direction. It can turn a little bit, but it's otherwise not this much. This is like 90-degree rotation. So I would say this leg might have been outside thigh, inside knee, outside calf, but the foot needed to go this way.
Well, funny enough, I've seen models that are able to do that.
Thanks,
It looks
Swendly.
very painful, but it's possible.
You bring me a photo of that.
Masters can do things strange with their feet.
I'm not talking about yoga masters here. Of the pretzel people of the world, So
no, we had the model in figure drawing class that could do that.
Yeah, they can turn it. You can get there, but I think what's happening is we never saw the transition happen from one place to the other. It felt like the knee was in one place and the ankle's in another, and why bother?
Yeah.
Like it's not the norm. Like this would go like that,
Yeah, well, that was what I was saying. Is that's a good subject. When you pick a reference, try to pick something that it helps you, not someone that can do some strange things with their bodies.
Contortionist.
Yeah, contortionist, exactly. All right, so we're coming to the end here. I saved these last two artists because they're both people on drawingforce.com right now. Here's Mark's work. Mark just started recently. And here he is. He's going through what I call the RAID process. He's iterating. you can see this is the first steps, right? So he's flowing through the body, he's trying to make those connections. This is how it starts, everyone, right? This is what we're talking about today. And you can see Mark's already getting a sense of fluidity and rhythm in the pose. And I think he's been on the site for maybe a month and a half at the most, right? So this is what we're after. And then last but not least, I saved Michael AJ's work. Michael's been on the site with us for a while now. I've actually had the chance to meet Michael even a few times at CTN. And look at what starts then to happen, right? Like he's going through force, he's trying to get form in here, there's some shape design happening. He's iterating, right? He's done this a couple of times. Great reference, like Diego just said, like pick, it starts with your reference, so pick good reference first. And look at how, just look at how much fluidity is in here, right? How much rhythm we have. So, and that's what today's talk is about. So I think with that, I'm going to close. I hope that this live session helped you guys and that you got a lot of questions answered by myself, Mritunjay, Diego, and Swendly. Email me if you have any particular subject that you're really interested in us talking about. I've got a long list, but I'm more than happy to go, hey, here's something that, the audience really wants to talk about, to try to get that in there. And keep in mind, that you want to start with curved lines first, not straight lines. You want to find rhythm in the body. Rhythm is being created by balancing out mass, right, to create balance, right, to create function of balance in our poses. Use the force line, right, to get better line out of it. And that will get you on the road to creating more fluid, more appealing, and actually more realistic and more dynamic figures than them being stiffened up, All right, thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you to the Force team, Diego, Swendly, and Mritunjay for coming today and and supporting and helping the audience. And we all will see you next Friday at the same time. All right, have a great weekend. Stay safe.
Yes, bye guys.
Yes, thank you guys. Take care, everyone.
Function of balance.